There was a time when making fun of someone's mother was considered the lowest form of disrespect. But what happened on Family Feud in November 2024 would show that some lines should never be crossed, no matter how desperate you are to win. When a contestant thought he could get cheap laughs by mocking an immigrant mother who had sacrificed everything for her family, Steve Harvey did something that reminded America what true respect looks like. This is the story of how one moment of cruelty was met with swift accountability, and how a mother's dignity became more important than any game show prize. Before we witness this powerful moment of justice, if you believe in standing up for those who sacrifice everything for their families, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We bring you stories that celebrate courage, dignity, and the values that make us human. The Nguyen family stood on the Family Feud stage with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that would be familiar to anyone who had ever competed on national television. At the center stood 38-year-old Daniel Nguyen, a software engineer from San Jose, California. Beside him were his wife Jennifer, his two teenage daughters Emma and Lily, and the person who meant more to him than anyone else in the world, his 65-year-old mother, My Nguyen. My Nguyen's story was one of extraordinary sacrifice and resilience. In 1982, she had fled Vietnam with her husband and 3-year-old son Daniel, leaving behind everything they had ever known. They had spent months in a refugee camp in Thailand before finally being sponsored to come to America. Her husband had died just 2 years after arriving in the United States, leaving Mai alone in a foreign country with a young child, no family support, and limited English skills. What Mai did next would define not just her life, but the lives of everyone who came after her. She worked 3 jobs simultaneously, cleaning office buildings at night, working in a nail salon during the day, and doing alterations and sewing on weekends. She slept 4 hours a night for nearly 20 years. Every penny she earned went toward 2 things: keeping a roof over their heads and making sure Daniel received the best education possible. Despite her grueling schedule, Mai never missed a parent-teacher conference. She would arrive in her work clothes, sometimes with cleaning supplies still in her bag, but she was always there. She learned English by watching educational television programs late at night after her shifts ended. She practiced pronunciation by reading children's books out loud, the same books she would later read to her grandchildren. Daniel had repaid his mother's sacrifices by excelling in school, earning a full scholarship to Stanford University, and building a successful career in technology. He had been able to buy his mother a house, ensuring she would never have to work those exhausting jobs again. But more than the material comfort, Daniel wanted the world to see his mother for who she truly was, a hero who had overcome impossible odds with grace, determination, and unwavering love. I stood on the stage wearing a traditional Vietnamese áo dye in elegant jade green, a color that represented growth and harmony. Her silver hair was pulled back neatly, and though her hands showed the wear of decades of manual labor, she held herself with quiet dignity. She spoke English well now, though her accent remained, a reminder of the journey she had made from a refugee camp to the stage of a major American television show. The family they were competing against was the Patterson family from Texas, led by 35-year-old Brad Patterson. Brad was a car dealership manager who had brought along his wife, his brother, his teenage son, and his father. From the moment both families were introduced, there was a noticeable difference in energy. The Nguyen family was earnest and respectful, clearly honored to be there. Brad Patterson, on the other hand, seemed to view the competition as an opportunity to show off his personality, making loud comments and trying to get laughs from the audience even before the game began. Steve Harvey, with his decades of experience reading people, noticed the dynamic immediately. He spent a little extra time talking with Mai, asking about her journey to America and her family. When she spoke about her pride in her son and granddaughters, her voice carried the weight of someone who had earned every moment of happiness through years of hardship. "Mrs. Nguyen," Steve said warmly, "your family is lucky to have you, and America is lucky to have you too." Mai smiled, her eyes glistening slightly. "America gave us a chance when we had nothing. I am the lucky one, Mr. Harvey." The audience applauded, moved by her humility and grace. But what no one knew was that this beautiful moment was about to be shattered by words that would shock everyone in the studio. The game began with the standard face-off question. Steve Harvey stood at his podium, ready to ask the first question that would determine which family would gain control of the board. Daniel Nguyen and Brad Patterson stepped forward to compete. "Name something people do to relax after a long day at work," Steve asked. Brad hit the buzzer first. "Watch TV." He called out confidently. The board revealed that watch television was indeed the #1 answer, and the Patterson family gained control. They chose to play rather than pass, and the game proceeded through its normal rhythm. The Patterson family was doing well, racking up points with solid answers. The Nguyen family watched from their side, supporting each other quietly and waiting for their turn. After the first round, the Patterson family had taken an early lead. During a commercial break, the families had a chance to relax briefly. This was when things began to take a turn. Brad Patterson, energized by his family's success and eager to maintain the attention he was getting from the audience, started making comments that pushed the boundaries of appropriate humor. When filming resumed for the second round, Steve asked the next face-off question. This time, it was my Nguyen's turn to represent her family against Brad's brother. I stepped forward with quiet confidence, her hands clasped in front of her in a gesture of respectful attention. Steve smiled at her warmly before reading the question. Name a reason someone might be late to work. My thought for a moment, then pressed the buzzer. Traffic, she answered in her accented English. The board lit up. Traffic was the #1 answer. The audience applauded enthusiastically, and Daniel's face beamed with pride as he watched his mother succeed. The Nguyen family chose to play, and they began working through the question with careful consideration. Emma, Daniel's teenage daughter, gave the next answer. Overslept, she said, which appeared on the board as the #3 answer. The family was doing well, showing good teamwork and communication. Then came Lily's turn. The youngest member of the team, she seemed nervous but determined. Childcare issues, she offered tentatively. Steve checked the board, not there. 1 strike for the Nguyen family. Jennifer, Daniel's wife, stepped up next. Car trouble, she suggested. The board revealed it as the #4 answer. The Nguyen family was successfully avoiding strikes and building their score. The audience was clearly rooting for them, appreciating their humble demeanor and obvious family bond. Now it was Daniel's turn again. He conferred briefly with his family before answering. Doctor appointment, he suggested. Not on the board. Strike 2. The tension was building. The Nguyen family needed to avoid 1 more strike, or the board would go to the Patterson family for a chance to steal. It was Mai's turn again. She thought carefully, her years of experience with early morning commutes and juggling multiple jobs informing her answer. Bad weather, she said clearly, her accent distinct but her answer perfectly understandable. Steve looked at the board with anticipation. Bad weather, he repeated. Show me bad weather. Not on the board. Strike 3. The Patterson family now had a chance to steal all the points the Nguyen family had accumulated. They huddled together, discussing their strategy. This is when Brad Patterson made the decision that would change everything. As the Patterson family broke from their huddle to give their answer, Brad stepped to the microphone with a smirk on his face. Before giving his family's official answer, he addressed Steve directly. You know, Steve, Brad said with a grin, I think I know why Mrs. Nguyen said bad weather. Back in her country, they probably used different transportation. You know, like boats and stuff. Maybe she was thinking about monsoon season? He laughed at his own comment, expecting the audience to join in. Instead, there was a shocked silence. A few uncomfortable chuckles came from people who were not quite sure what they had just heard. But Brad was not done. Emboldened by what he mistook for approval, he continued. I mean, no offense, but when you come from a place where you're escaping on rafts, I guess you think about weather differently, right? The studio fell completely silent. The smile vanished from Steve Harvey's face, replaced by an expression that regular viewers would recognize immediately. It was the look that meant someone had crossed a line they should not have crossed. My Nguyen stood motionless, her face composed but her eyes betraying the pain of hearing her refugee experience, her family's trauma, turned into a punchline. Daniel stepped protectively closer to his mother, his jaw clenched with suppressed anger. His daughters looked between their grandmother and the contestant who had just mocked her journey. Steve Harvey put down his cards. He walked away from his podium and stood in the center of the stage, positioning himself between both families. The crew knew something significant was happening. Cameras continued rolling, but everyone held their breath. Brad, Steve said, his voice dangerously quiet. What did you just say? Brad, still not fully grasping the severity of his mistake, tried to laugh it off. Come on, Steve, it's just a joke. Everyone's so sensitive these days. I was just having fun with the game. What happened next would become one of the most discussed moments in Family Feud history. Steve Harvey took a long, deep breath before speaking. When he did, his voice carried the weight of someone who had witnessed too much ignorance and decided it was time to take a stand. A joke, Steve repeated slowly. Let me tell you what is not a joke. This woman right here, he gestured toward my Nguyen, escaped a war-torn country with her young son. She spent months in a refugee camp, not knowing if she would survive or if her child would have a future. She came to America with nothing, not a joke. She worked 3 jobs for 20 years to give her son the opportunities that many of us take for granted. Not a joke. She learned a new language, adapted to a new culture, and built a life from absolutely nothing. Not a joke. The audience began to applaud, but Steve raised his hand, signaling he was not finished. You know what else is not a joke? Steve continued, his voice rising with emotion. Making fun of someone's refugee experience, making fun of someone's mother. Making fun of the sacrifices that immigrants make to give their children a better life. None of that is a joke, Brad. That is cruelty disguised as humor. Brad's face had turned pale. He tried to speak, but Steve was not done. I have been hosting this show for a long time. I have seen thousands of families come through here. And one thing I have learned is that every family has a story. Every person on this stage has overcome something to get here. But some stories are more powerful than others. Some stories deserve our respect, our admiration, and our gratitude. Mrs. Nguyen's story is one of those. Steve turned to face me directly, his expression softening with genuine respect. Mrs. Nguyen, I want to apologize on behalf of this show and everyone here. You came to share your family's joy, to celebrate how far you have come, and to show your grandchildren what pride and dignity look like. You did not come here to be mocked for the hardest journey of your life. My Nguyen, with the same grace that had carried her through decades of hardship, responded in a steady voice. Mr. Harvey, I have heard worse in my life. When you are different, when you speak with an accent, when your skin is a different color, people sometimes say cruel things. But I learned long ago that their words cannot change who I am or what I have accomplished. I am proud of my journey. I am proud of my son. I am proud of my family. No joke can take that away. Her words hung in the air, a testament to decades of maintaining dignity in the face of discrimination. The audience erupted in applause, many people visibly moved to tears. Daniel wrapped his arm around his mother's shoulders, his own eyes wet with emotion. Steve Harvey nodded, clearly moved by Mai's response, but he was not finished addressing the situation. Mrs. Nguyen, you are absolutely right. Their words cannot diminish what you have built or who you are. But that does not mean we should accept those words without consequence. Brad, I need you and your family to leave this stage. You are disqualified from this competition. Brad's mouth fell open in shock. You cannot be serious. It was just a joke. I was trying to lighten the mood. I am completely serious, Steve responded firmly. This is my show. These are my rules, and on this stage we treat people with respect. We do not mock refugees. We do not make fun of people's accents. We do not turn someone's trauma into entertainment. Those are not negotiable standards, Brad. You violated them, and now you face the consequences. Brad's brother tried to intervene. Steve, come on. My brother made a mistake, but kicking us off the show, that seems extreme. Steve shook his head. What is extreme is thinking you can mock a refugee's experience and face no accountability. What is extreme is believing that just because you call something a joke, it stops being offensive. What is extreme is asking this family to continue competing against someone who just insulted the foundation of their American dream. Brad's father, an older man who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Unlike his son, he looked ashamed. Steve, my son was wrong, completely wrong. Mrs. Nguyen, I apologize for his behavior. We raised him better than this, and I am embarrassed that he would say such things. The sincerity in the older man's voice was evident, and it created a moment of grace in an otherwise tense situation. I nodded in acknowledgement of his apology. Steve addressed the father with respect. Sir, I appreciate your apology, but the decision stands. Your family will need to leave the stage. As security began to escort the Patterson family away, Brad made one last attempt to salvage his reputation. This is censorship, cancel culture. I have freedom of speech. Steve's response was measured but powerful. You have freedom of speech, Brad. The government is not arresting you for your words, but freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. It does not mean you get to keep your platform when you abuse it. It does not mean people have to give you a microphone to spread your ignorance. You are free to think and say whatever you want. You are not free to do it on my stage. The audience gave Steve a standing ovation as the Patterson family was escorted from the studio. Once they were gone, Steve turned back to the Nguyen family with a warm smile. Now, he said, we have a game to finish. You all still want to play? Daniel looked at his mother, his wife, and his daughters. They nodded together. We do, Mr. Harvey. We came here as a family, and we want to finish as a family. Then let us find you a worthy opponent, Steve declared. During the commercial break, the producers quickly arranged for another family that had been scheduled to tape later in the day to come out and compete. The Chen family, a Chinese-American family from New York, eagerly agreed. When they learned what had happened, the mother of the Chen family immediately sought out Mai to express her solidarity as a fellow immigrant. When taping resumed, Steve addressed the audience and the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, we just had to remove a family from this competition due to disrespectful behavior. But Family Feud is about celebrating families from all backgrounds, all cultures, and all walks of life. We are bringing in the Chen family to compete, and we are going to show you what this show is really about. Respect, fun, and the celebration of what makes America truly great, our diversity. The game that followed was everything Family Feud should be. Both families played with enthusiasm, good sportsmanship, and mutual respect. When the Chen family gave a correct answer, the Nguyen family applauded. When the Nguyen family scored points, the Chen family cheered. It was a beautiful display of how competition could bring out the best in people rather than the worst. The Nguyen family ultimately won the game and advanced to fast money. Daniel and I participated together in the bonus round, and there was something profoundly moving about watching a son and mother who had been through so much compete side by side. They scored 187 points, winning the $20,000 prize. But as with everything that had happened that day, the money seemed secondary to the larger meaning of the moment. After the cameras stopped rolling for the official taping, Steve Harvey asked both the Nguyen and Chen families to stay. What followed was an extended conversation that would be included as a special segment when the episode aired. Steve sat down with my Nguyen and asked her to share more of her story. With her son translating some of the more difficult English phrases, Mai talked about the journey from Vietnam, the refugee camp, the early days in America when everything felt foreign and frightening. The hardest part was not the work, Mai explained. I did not mind working 3 jobs. The hardest part was wondering if I had made the right choice. When Daniel was young and I was so tired I could barely stand, I would wonder if we would have been better off staying in Vietnam. But then Daniel would show me his report card, all the grades, and I knew we had made the right choice. I knew the sacrifice was worth it. Steve turned to Daniel. What does it mean to you having your mother here today? Daniel's voice was thick with emotion when he answered. My mother gave up everything so I could have opportunities she never had. She worked jobs that destroyed her hands and her back so I could go to college. She lived in a tiny apartment so I could have books and school supplies. Everything I am, everything I have accomplished exists because of her sacrifice. Being here with her today, winning together, it is just a small way to honor everything she has done. The Chen family mother spoke up, sharing her own story of immigration from China, working in restaurants while studying for her nursing exams, facing discrimination and doubt. When Brad made that joke, she said, I felt it too, because I know what it is like to have people mock your accent to make you feel less than because you came from somewhere else. Mrs. Nguyen's grace in that moment showed all of us how to respond to ignorance with dignity. This extended segment became a powerful addition to the episode when it aired 3 weeks later. The clip of Steve Harvey removing Brad Patterson from the competition went viral within hours, racking up millions of views. But what touched people even more was Mai's response, her refusal to be diminished by cruelty, and her quiet assertion of pride in her journey. The response from viewers was overwhelming. Immigrant communities across America expressed their gratitude for Steve's defense of Mai. Asian American organizations praised the episode for showing the reality of discrimination that many immigrants face, while also celebrating their resilience and contributions. Refugee organizations reported a surge in donations and volunteer applications, with many people citing Mai's story as their inspiration. The episode became a teaching tool in cultural sensitivity trainings, showing both what not to do and how to respond when witnessing discrimination. The Nguyen family received thousands of messages from people sharing their own immigration stories, thanking Mai for representing their experiences with such grace. Daniel's employer, a major tech company, featured Mai in their diversity and inclusion materials, honoring her as an example of the sacrifices that immigrant families make. Steve Harvey followed up on his promise to use his platform responsibly. In the weeks following the episode, he dedicated segments of his talk show to discussing immigration, refugee experiences, and the importance of respecting the sacrifices that families make. He partnered with organizations that help refugees adjust to life in America, using his resources to provide job training, English language classes, and community support. Mai herself became an unexpected spokesperson for refugee rights. Organizations invited her to speak at events, sharing her story and advocating for better support systems for refugees and immigrants. She always spoke with the same humility and grace she had shown on Family Feud, never seeking attention, but always willing to use her experience to help others. The $20,000 the family won was donated to establish an English language learning program at the community center where Mai had once taken her own classes. The program would provide free lessons to immigrants and refugees, along with job placement assistance and cultural orientation services. Mai insisted the program be named not after her, but after her late husband, honoring the partner who had started the journey with her even though he did not live to see its fruition. 3 months after the episode aired, Steve Harvey invited the Nguyen family back for a special reunion segment. This time, they brought with them representatives from several refugee organizations and immigrant advocacy groups. The segment focused on the ongoing needs of refugee communities and how viewers could get involved in supporting new Americans. During the reunion, Steve revealed that Brad Patterson had reached out privately. He had written a lengthy letter apologizing not just to the Nguyen family, but to all immigrants and refugees he had offended with his thoughtless comments. The letter explained that watching the episode had forced him to confront his own prejudices and ignorance about the immigrant experience. Brad wrote that he had never really thought about what refugees go through, Steve explained. He said that hearing Mrs. Nguyen's full story, seeing the pain in her eyes when he made his joke, and witnessing her grace in forgiving him made him realize how much he did not know and did not appreciate about immigrant contributions to America. He has started volunteering with a refugee resettlement organization in his community, helping families navigate the challenges of starting over in a new country. Mai Nguyen's response to this news demonstrated once again her remarkable character. "I accept his apology. We all make mistakes. What matters is whether we learn from them. If my experience on that show helped him see refugees as human beings with stories and struggles, then something good came from something painful. That is how we grow as a society." The episode also had a profound impact on Family Feud itself. The show implemented new guidelines for contestant behavior and expanded their diversity initiatives to ensure that families from all backgrounds felt welcome and respected. Applications from immigrant families increased dramatically, with many citing Mai's appearance as their inspiration to represent their communities on national television. 1 year after the episode aired, Mai was invited to speak at a naturalization ceremony where new citizens were being sworn in. Her speech, delivered in English that had continued to improve over her 40-plus years in America, moved many attendees to tears. "When I came to this country," she said, "I was afraid. I did not speak the language, I did not understand the culture, I had no money and no family to help me. But America gave me a chance. Americans gave me jobs. They helped me learn English. They accepted my son in their schools. Yes, there were some who were cruel. There were some who told us to go back where we came from, but there were many more who were kind, who saw our humanity, who gave us opportunities." She continued, "To all of you becoming citizens today, remember that this country is not perfect. You will face challenges. Some people will judge you for your accent or your appearance. You will also find kindness, opportunity, and the chance to build a better life. Work hard. Stay proud of where you came from, and when someone is cruel, respond with dignity, not anger. That is how we change hearts and minds." The local news covered her speech, and the clip circulated widely on social media. Educators began using Mai's story in civics and history classes as a contemporary example of the immigrant experience and the ongoing work of building a more inclusive society. Steve Harvey remained in contact with the Nguyen family over the following years. He attended Emma's high school graduation and later her college acceptance celebration when she was admitted to UCLA. When Lily won a scholarship for refugee children of immigrants, Steve shared the news on his social media platforms, praising the family's continued commitment to giving back. 2 years after the original episode, a documentary filmmaker approached the Nguyen family about making a film that would trace Mai's journey from Vietnam to that moment on the Family Feud stage. The film, titled 3 Jobs, 1 Dream, premiered at several film festivals and won awards for its intimate portrayal of the immigrant experience and the sacrifices that first-generation Americans make for their children. The documentary included interviews with dozens of refugees and immigrants from various countries, all sharing similar stories of sacrifice, discrimination, resilience, and ultimate triumph. But Mai's story served as the emotional center, showing how one woman's determination could change the trajectory of an entire family. Perhaps the most touching part of the documentary was a segment filmed at Daniel's workplace, where he had risen to become a senior executive at his tech company. The film showed him in meetings, leading teams, making decisions that affected thousands of people. In a quiet moment, Daniel reflected on what it meant to live the life his mother had made possible. "Every day I go to work, I think about my mother cleaning office buildings at night while I was sleeping," Daniel said. "I think about her hands, worn down by years of labor so that my hands could type on keyboards and write code. I think about how she learned English from children's books so that I could get an education in English. Everything I do professionally is built on her sacrifice. I can never repay her, but I can honor her by using the opportunities she gave me to make a difference in the world. The company Daniel worked for was so moved by Mai's story that they established a scholarship program for children of refugees, providing full college funding, mentorship, and job placement assistance. In the program's first year, they awarded scholarships to 50 students, each one representing a family that had overcome tremendous odds to build a new life in America. 5 years after that memorable Family Feud episode, Steve Harvey was invited to speak at a conference on immigration and cultural integration. During his keynote address, he reflected on that day when he stopped the show to defend my union. "I have had many important moments in my career," Steve said. "I have won awards, achieved ratings milestones, and met influential people. But the moment I am most proud of is when I stood up for a refugee mother who deserved respect and dignity. Because in that moment I had a choice. I could have let the joke slide, finished the game, and avoided controversy, or I could have stood for something bigger than entertainment, bigger than ratings, bigger than my own comfort." He continued, "My Nguyen taught me something that day. She taught me that true strength is not about fighting back with the same cruelty you receive. It is about maintaining your dignity, your grace, and your humanity even when others try to strip it away." She had every right to be angry, to lash out, to match cruelty with cruelty. Instead, she responded with the same grace that had carried her through decades of hardship. That is the kind of strength that changes the world. Today, when people discuss that episode of Family Feud, they talk about several powerful lessons. They talk about the importance of defending those who are vulnerable to mockery and discrimination. They talk about how refugees and immigrants deserve our respect, not our ridicule. They talk about how one person with a platform can make a significant difference by standing up for what is right. And they talk about Mai Nguyen, a refugee who became an American hero through sheer determination, sacrifice, and unshakable dignity. The episode has been used in college courses on immigration, in cultural competency trainings for healthcare workers and educators, and in religious institutions discussing how to welcome newcomers. It has sparked countless conversations in living rooms across America about the sacrifices that immigrant families make and the debt of gratitude that the nation owes to those who choose to build their lives here. Mai Nguyen, now in her 70s, continues to live quietly in the house her son bought for her, surrounded by her grandchildren and the growing family that her sacrifices made possible. She volunteers at the English learning program that bears her late husband's name, helping new refugees navigate the same challenges she once faced. She teaches them not just English, but resilience, patience, and the importance of maintaining dignity in the face of discrimination. When asked about her appearance on Family Feud and everything that followed, Mai always returns to the same theme. "I did not do anything special," she insists. "I just did what any mother would do. I worked hard. I sacrificed. I kept my family together. Millions of immigrant mothers do the same thing every day. They are the real heroes." As we close this powerful story, remember that every immigrant family has a story of sacrifice. Behind every accent is a journey. Behind every non-Western name is a history of courage. The next time you encounter someone who seems different, remember Mai Nguyen and the millions like her who gave up everything for a chance at a better life. If this story touched your heart, if it challenged you to think differently, or if it inspired you to treat immigrants with more respect and understanding, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We share stories that matter, stories that celebrate human dignity, and stories that remind us of our shared humanity. The lesson from that day on Family Feud is clear. Refugee experiences are not jokes. Immigrant struggles are not punchlines. The sacrifices that families make to build better lives deserve our respect, our admiration, and our gratitude. When we witness someone mocking these experiences, we have a responsibility to speak up, just as Steve Harvey did. Mai Nguyen continues to inspire everyone who knows her story. She proves that the American dream is real, but it requires sacrifice, determination, and unwavering commitment to family. She shows us that grace under pressure is more powerful than anger in the face of cruelty. And she reminds us that the true measure of a society is how it treats those who are most vulnerable, most different, and most in need of compassion. Steve Harvey continues to use his platform to celebrate diversity, defend human dignity, and stand against all forms of discrimination. The Nguyen family continues to thrive, building on the foundation that Mai created through decades of sacrifice. And millions of viewers carry with them the memory of a moment when television became more than entertainment. It became a lesson in courage, respect, and the power of standing up for what is right. That is the true legacy of the day Steve Harvey stopped the show when a contestant made a joke about an immigrant mother. It was not just about removing someone from a game show. It was about affirming that every person's story deserves respect, that cruelty disguised as humor is still cruelty, and that those with platforms have a responsibility to use them in defense of human dignity.